BrickFleet here, and this week's video has been a particularly interesting one to make. It is a topic that I've really been wanting to talk about for a while, but I just didn't know how to get it into words. So anyway, let's get right onto the video. When I walk into a LEGO store, or even when I shop online, I can't help but to get this feeling that something feels different. I would say that it feels off, but that implies it's a bad thing. It really isn't. Although, I feel that something has definitely changed in the past decade with the brand identity of LEGO. Let me frame it this way. No matter where you're going to shop for LEGO, whether it's the website or in person at a LEGO store, or maybe even a third-party retailer, there's always going to be some sort of an influence on your purchasing decisions. Whether it's because it's a theme that interests you, it's connected to a store you like, or more likely than not, it could even be the packaging design. The consumer experience is judged, of course, on a lot of variables. I'm sure you can rattle off a lot of different reasons why you might like LEGO Star Wars or Ninjago. I want you to think about the different elements that encourage your purchasing decisions with LEGO, and what motivates you to continue the hobby. Our reasons are probably going to be vastly different, but I guarantee you that part of what influenced you has to do with at its core, design consistency, product representation, and maybe even identity. Throughout the decades, there have been many different design styles and motifs that have emerged. A lot of these aesthetics are grounded in and partly inspired by cultural events, innovations in technology, and phenomenons that led up to the emergence of these stylistic choices. Of course, these aesthetic trends were developed partly by corporations. However, that doesn't mean that it wasn't at least inspired by some sort of natural, positive response to these designs. Without getting too deep into why these aesthetic trends arise, it's a synergistic relationship between everyday people and companies who research these trends to make their products more appealing or friendly. Which leads me to finally talk about Frutiger Aero, a design style that emerged in the early 2000s and lasted until the early 2010s. You don't really have to know what Frutiger Aero is to understand my point. The fact is that these design styles are etched into every tool we use daily. From very overt examples like user interfaces on computers, phones, and laptops, all the way down to common household products like shampoo bottles. So, I haven't really gotten to what Frutiger Aero is exactly. Frutiger Aero can be simply described as a design aesthetic from the early 2000s to early 2010s, characterized by skeuomorphism, glossy textures, nature elements, vibrant colors, and the prevalent use of the Frutiger typeface, blending technological motifs with organic and humanistic elements. What makes this design so special is that it wasn't just a style choice that came about for absolutely no reason. In the context of the early 2000s, just under 60% of the US population actually owned a computer. It was essential at this point to get people integrated into technology, and the existing design of the time, Y2K, was overtly industrial and unfriendly to the average user, thus making it harder to transition into the everyday use of these products. These trends aren't just unique to user interface experiences. In a more narrow context, what we'll be exploring today is how exactly Frutiger Aero influenced LEGO in marketing, website design, and product packaging. LEGO box art is often the first encounter for many consumers. During the Frutiger Aero era, this was no exception. Many products from this era featured vibrant, glossy sheens, and the characters were set against dynamic backdrops. The blues of the skies and the seas felt deeper, and fiery explosions were almost backlit with intensity. The use of the Frutiger typeface became more pronounced, creating a contemporary feel that resonated with the era's technological advances in graphic design. But it wasn't just the main visual components, but even the more subtle details like the icons indicating piece count or age range were rendered with subtle gradients, giving them a tactile look similar to the digital interfaces of the time. By integrating design elements from the dominant aesthetic trend, LEGO ensured that their product packaging was not only a preview of the play experience, but also a visual harmony that aligned with Frutiger Aero's receptivity of the time. LEGO seemed to know how to adapt these trends without losing their own brand identity. Picturing all of these sets on store shelves made the experience feel different. All of the boxes were both widely different but also uniformly synergized at the same time. My favorite examples include the backdrops of Atlantis, metallic borders of power miners, and the tech abstractionism found in Bionicle. The Bionicle line, especially in the box art, effectively conveyed this dystopian feel of tech mixed with organic elements, weaving a narrative where machinery and ancient elemental powers coexisted. LEGO Agents borrowed these aesthetic trends in their false user interfaces, both in the Flash games, box art, and stickered elements in the toys themselves. I can't stress enough about the fact that Agents was one of the first lines by LEGO to adapt this design language. The simplicity of the good guys being in navy blue, and the contrast of the bad guys being in bright orange, aligns with the design movements of the time. The theme of using technological elements for the greater good as heroes played a big role in the relationship of combining humanism with technology. The gradients of the box art featured chromed, weathered, and skeuomorphic perspectives, which set a trend for future themes that borrow traits from the Frutiger design movement. After the release of Agents, subsequently Bionicle and Star Wars would be overhauled from its Y2K roots to the more commonly adapted design movements of the Frutiger era, while new themes like Power Miners, Space Police, and Atlantis would be the golden age of LEGO in this design trend. In March of 2005, the LEGO website would be overhauled with a completely new look in the wake of Web 2.0. Computers could handle more graphically intense web pages, resulting in the birth of Adobe Flash Player and Shockwave. In the current era, we take for granted the fact that we can open up websites with tons of different HD photos, videos, and games almost seamlessly. But the technology at the time was at its infancy and just slowly starting to get better. It was a revolutionary step for companies to attract their consumer base with more engaging tools and graphics. Website presentation was, and still is, an important step in company presence and identity. I want to pick apart a couple of the elements on the LEGO website from 2005 to 2010. Firstly, the colors on the site are of varying bright hues. Red, green, blue, and yellow seem to take up the design of the button elements, while the background color scheme consists of various shades of light blue. Notice that a lot of the design elements and buttons on this page, like the products, club, and shop categories, have glossy and rounded edges. These are examples of skeuomorphic interfaces, a common trend that mimicked real-life counterparts of how objects would react in light. In 2009, we'd see the product choices obtain animations. If we look into specific categories, like Power Miners, we'd see just about everything related to the theme, from the different sets in the first two waves, along with short product animations showing off the sets. My favorite feature in the site is the quizzes, because the rock monsters have these really unique, glossy digital renders that aren't actually part of the physical products or the box art. There are similar features on all of the different products from Bionicle, Exoforce, Castle, City, and many other pages on the site having these features with their own skeuomorphic web elements and color schemes. I think that these were relatively engaging ways to get kids interested in the products. LEGO wasn't just selling them toys, they were giving them stories to be inspired by, and the LEGO website took this concept a few steps further and got people more involved in the stories they had to offer. I'd like to expand upon how and why I think the marketing strategy that LEGO uses to promote its products has changed so much in the past decade. The themes of the 2000s often utilized a strategy of packaging their stories across various media platforms, from TV commercials, flash games, and comics, to online short films, and maybe even the occasional ARG, long before the term was ever popularized. LEGO was really going all out on advertising these products because there simply was no other effective vector of marketing to get these products seen by children. From a personal perspective, what defined the Frutiger era to me were these modes of advertising. I was always excited for the next LEGO magazine, to play a flash game on the home computer, or even the occasional bouts of excitement from seeing the commercials on TV. I often say this, but I can't tell if I'm just blinded by my rose-tinted nostalgia for this era, or if LEGO's past efforts were just genuinely more engaging than what there is today. The Frutiger era wasn't just about the physical design experience of the toys, or even the website. With the countless hours of documentaries and video essays I've watched about this subject, I feel that people tend to miss the bigger picture. The Frutiger era wasn't just a design trend or a user experience. but a form of commentary that spoke to humanism and society's values. A lot of what LEGO did in the 2000s were more experimental and didn't always yield high returns. The internet was still in its infancy, content creation was just barely beginning to take off, and strangely enough, the most effective marketing vectors that children were susceptible to were still effective well into the late 2000s. However, that would take a sharp change of course early into the 2010s, as in the current year, mediums like Flash have been replaced with more practical applications like WebGL, while online short films can simply be hosted on YouTube pages and other social media. In the current year, a lot of the promotional material is crowdsourced by fans and ambassadors of LEGO. The need for LEGO to funnel their marketing budget into experimental and risky campaigns is gone. With the way that the internet is today, these strategies seem risky at best and obsolete at worst. Nonetheless, I feel that LEGO quickly adapted to and pioneered modern strategies in order to stay relevant in the current year. 2013 would mark the end of the Frutiger era. An overhaul of LEGO's marketing, product, and web design would slowly pave what we have today. In some ways, I definitely miss the design aesthetic of the 2000s. I've also grown to resent the current era of design, but I do understand why this transition had to be made. In the case of LEGO specifically, it really is a fragile game of balancing design aesthetics and creative ambition with the practicality of streamlining experiences for the consumer. It definitely feels like a lot of the design decisions pre-2013 can be considered jarring today. In the current year, product representation seems to be at a compromise and in a favor towards pushing the actual product into the forefront rather than distracting consumers with intricate packaging. LEGO's goodwill with their consumer base became somewhat turbulent after the announced price increases back in 2022, so it's important to restore this trust with clarity. I'd argue that one of the major reasons that LEGO has decided to move to more flat and basic product designs is that it eliminates the apprehensiveness and skepticism against their products. The average person today seems to be more monetarily conscious than in the past. It's within the best interest of companies like LEGO to be more straightforward about the actual contents of their products, rather than distracting consumers with premium and vibrant packaging. This is true with not just LEGO, but in the broader world too.